After a demanding school day, Kotarou Tennouji, a typical high school student in Japan, spends his nights meandering through his hometown streets in search of some fresh air. He discovers a girl at a strange tree perched on a cliff. When Kotarou tries to chat to the girl, she stabs him instead. Kotarou wakes up in his room, nearly toppling over on his chair as his blood spurts out of him. He speculates as to the identity of the person he just dreamed about. The doorbell rings as he tries to bring some sense to this strange dream. When Kotarou responds, he learns that Madame Rikako, their neighbor and the mother of his boyhood buddy Kotori, has gone missing and begs for Kotarou's assistance in finding her. Taking on the assignment, Kotarou sets out to locate Kotori by trekking into the nearby woodland. After a while of walking and screaming out Kotori's name, Kotarou comes upon an odd creature in the jungle. He disregards it and continues on his way. He discovers Kotori dozing off next to a tree a little distance later. Kotarou eventually decides to take advantage of her propensity for sleepwalking to guide her home after multiple attempts to rouse her up have failed. Kotori completely awakens when she comes home and thanks Kotarou for aiding her. Kotarou returns home, and Madame Rikako gets her child back. He flees for his home after spotting something strange in the sky while he is traveling. Fortunately, he makes it home and makes himself go to bed. Shortly after he nods off, a force beyond his comprehension unlocks the entrance to his balcony and slinks beneath his duvet to plant a kiss on his wrist. Kotarou jumps back up as soon as she senses it. Kotarou wears the kiss mark on his wrist the following day when he goes to school as usual. Kotarou runs into his class bully at school. When Yoshino finds Kotarou in a tight spot, he becomes irate. He can't recall what he asked for the night before. After racking his brains, Kotarou realizes that Yoshino had actually challenged him to a duel the day before, which he had disregarded. Kotarou still won't let go of it. Before Lucia, the class representative, intervenes to break up their dispute and stop them from hitting each other, things start to become heated. Even after everyone has returned to class, Yoshino continues to push Kotarou. A second female arrives to diffuse the tension between them and prevent Yoshino from assaulting Kotarou. For the remainder of the day, classes continue as usual. When night falls and Kotarou wakes up, he finds that the girl ghost from the previous night is still sucking his wrist. He starts to believe that some strange curse has been placed upon him because he has offended a god or something. The following day, Kotarou discovers a female stuck between some tree branches as he makes his way to school. After rescuing her, he learns that the girl is a transfer student, and that was her first day at their school. Although Kotarou offers to assist her, the load is too large for him to handle. The woman picks up her load and heads to school after noticing the stress on his face. Kotarou learns in class that the transfer student's name is Otori Chihaya. Following the required introductions, Otori was instructed to take a seat close to Kotarou, the person who had previously seen her underwear when she was stuck in the tree branch. Otori fights Kotarou when he tries to speak with her. Fortunately, she declines, and the lesson continues as usual. Kotarou meets a woman from the disciplinary committee during recess, and she playfully gives him a lunch date with her in the courtyard. That day, Kotarou declines to have dinner with her, but says they will another time. At that moment, Ino from the press club stops over to question Kotarou regarding the rumors that he paid for his education. Once Kotarou has given Inu her information, she walks away and leaves a piece of paper on the ground. Kotarou notices that the female might be terrible news for him when he picks up the piece of paper. When Kotarou returns to class, he requests to take Otori on a tour of the campus. Once more feeling humiliated, Otori departs from Kotarou to see someone else. Otori meets another eerie woman who seems to be familiar with her. They talk about a few subjects, including whether or not she should make friends at her new school. The following day during school, Inao informs Kotarou about the academies which the school's underground famous. Despite never attending class, the witch, a typical student, manages to outperform everyone in the school. When Kotarou learns that Senri Akane is her name, He asks Inu to assist him in tracking down the witch. Because of her journalistic attitude, Inu may say yes. That day, Inu and Kotarou take a break from their problems after class and start looking for the witch. Kotarou's fellow student Satu sends them a new book that tells them about the occult leader. Kotarou thanks him for his assistance and moves on with Inu's search. When they enter the occult group's strange dark chamber, some of the recorded voices startle them a little. They depart after locating their target. Kotarou finds himself confined in his own room, with no lighting by dusk. He makes every effort to get out of the room. To no effect, he even attempts smashing the glass door of the balcony. Suddenly, the ghost girl materializes on his bed linens and moves toward him. Kotarou panics, but things settle down in due course. When Kotarou arrives at an office the following day, she discovers an odd questionnaire. After reading it, he returns to the hallway. He meets Otori and Inu there and strikes up a pleasant conversation with them. As Otori and Kotarou's chemistry grows, Inu senses it and tells them to stay together. After their meeting, Kotarou rides her bicycle into the city with Otori. Together, they had a fantastic afternoon. As night falls, they bid each other farewell, and Otori returns home. Kotarou receives a text message from the academy instructing him to return to class that evening. As Kotarou dashes to school, certain notices on the bulletin board help her find her way. A little while later, the academy decides to reveal her face to him. When Kotarou first sees her, his mind starts to respond to her being there. He has a vision of himself being torn to pieces. While Kotarou is running, the witch sends her pink ribbons after him to catch up. For a while, Kotarou is able to avoid the witch's ribbons, but eventually she catches up with him. Kotarou stands up and sprints ahead, colliding with a door in the process. Kotarou goes to the room behind the door and opens it. A little thing appears there and charges at him, demanding blood. Kotarou strikes the beast with a slap. One of the little beings, Pani, stops by, and the other, Gil, introduces herself. Kotarou discovers from his conversations with them that the creatures are more akin to vampire bats with a ravenous thirst for blood. Then, in search of an escape, Kotarou chases them around the room. They discover a noisy monster sleeping in the space after moving a few more meters inside. They just need to be quiet and sneak past it while it's sleeping. Regretfully, Jill awakens the beast by creating a disturbance. After it ends, the monster pursues Kotarou and tries to kill him. Kotarou succeeds in avoiding the creature. The witch who was previously pursuing him shows up and ends the monster as he looks for a vulnerable spot. Her blows were so powerful that the realm burst as a result of the explosion. After being returned to the school, Kotarou arrives in front of a mannequin. He moves the mannequin to an odd room after picking it up. He enters and is greeted by a woman who invites him to her mysterious chamber. The woman identifies herself as Senri Akane, the notorious occult school club leader. In addition, Kotarou gives her an introduction and displays his questionnaire. She looks over his responses and believes he lied to them. Kotarou confides in her that he believes a terrible force has cursed him. Senri chooses to gift him a paperclip charm and a few talismans. Reluctantly accepting the charms and talisman, Kotarou leaves for his house. Kotarou's talisman, Tomoko, materializes into a human and greets him in one of his nightmares. She says she'll keep him safe from harm, but only if he goes on a date with her when she's done. The small woman still makes her regular appearance in his room to suck his wrist that same night while he sleeps. But this time, Kotarou's wrist tasted strange. Disgusted, the small lady walks away from him. Kotarou recalls his nighttime adventure in the alternate reality of school as he wakes up the next morning. When he arrives in class, he speaks with Kotori about the incident. He is hushed by Kotori, who also gives him advice not to bring up these topics in public. With a sigh, Kotarou heads straight to his seat. Kotarou gets Yoshino a fruit parfait on his lunch break. After seeing through Kotarou's trickery, Yoshino discovers that the prankster added spicy sauce to the parfait in an attempt to elicit a response from him. He moves the parfait aside and asks Kotarou to replace it with Lucia, who represents their class. The woman bites into the rearranged parfait and finds it to be quite tasty. Startled, Kotarou chooses to sample the parfait to determine for himself if it was hot. His cheeks flushes as he spits up the parfait after taking a taste. The parfait's owner becomes enraged and punches Kotarou. Yoshino only chuckles and completes his meal before returning to class. Before lunch is finished, Kotarou locates and joins Shizuru, the reprimanded woman from earlier, under a tree in the yard. When Kotarou questions her about why she is camped out beneath a tree, Shizuru responds that she enjoys the quiet atmosphere there. Kotarou meets Senri after lunch and tells her about his encounter from the night before. Senri discards one of his talismans, the Tomorrow. Kotarou chooses to look into the Occult Club as payback. What do they do in the club? He asks her. Senri informs him that they are not very active. Then, before she lets him touch her bobbies, she demands that he demonstrate the veracity of his premonitions. Kotarou, who has been crushing on Senri since they first met, arrives home that evening to rest. Nobody is surprised when the female returns to his room and sucks his wrist. Kotarou approaches Senri the following day to beg him to let Tomoko work on his investigative team. Tomoko is grudgingly allowed to accompany Senri, and in the following scene, they create a blog for the occult group. That night, Kotarou is staring at the strange female who sleeps extremely close to him. Unintentionally, Kotarou touched her. When he realizes it wasn't a dream, he jumps out of bed and cries out for forgiveness. The following day, Kotarou meets with Research Club member Anao, who grills him about his motivation for joining the Occult Club. After giving her a pathetic explanation, Kotarou moves on with his day. He then locates Shizuru and presents her to the other members of the team. Shizuru gets a call from Lucia as he's doing this. Kotarou tells her to call Lucia and use obscene language. He had no idea that Lucia had been waiting for him to make a mistake, so she could exact revenge for the parfait incident right around the corner. Lucia chooses to join his team after getting her retribution, only to be near Shizuru and look after her. Kotarou experiences a couple more strange incidents throughout his life. At that moment, he makes the decision to be an outgoing individual who connects people, as contrast to the depressed and lonely person he had previously wished he was. While Kotarou spends the remainder of his day joyfully and brightly with his friends, the girl ghost that visits him at night looks on. Kotarou gets up and gets ready for school one lovely morning. He hears some committee leaders talk about the Harvest Festival, which is quickly approaching at school. The first several leaders become extremely tense and begin talking nonsensically. The terrible times quickly come to an end, and Kotarou meets his worst adversary Yoshino in the corridor. Yoshino ignores Kotarou as he should and continues to walk. Kotarou, though, takes it well and continues to look forward to the Harvest Festa. When he later arrives at the Occult Club, he discovers Senri in her room with Sakuya, a new student. Otori stops them just before he reveals his true identity to welcome her brother Sakuya Otori. Once Sakuya and his sister discover who he really is, Kotarou starts to make fun of them. Sakuya declares his hate for Kotarou as he eventually leaves for class. Kotarou questions Otori in class about her possible ties to an aristocratic family. After seeing her and realizing that she is incompetent at everything, he comes to the conclusion that she cannot be noble. He enters mischievous mode and uses his dragon mode to tease his opponent once again. Kotarou gets to continue his team's probe into the Occult Club after class. They all decide, after perusing a little information, that in order to continue their inquiry, they must locate a Tsuchinoko monster. Kotarou and the other women look for the creature in the school garden in the next scene. Kotarou touches Lucia's butt by accident. Lucia punches him till he is unconscious as her face turns scarlet. Everyone starts chasing the Tsuchinoko beast as soon as it reveals its face. When Kotori finally manages to get her hands on it, she regrettably takes out Tsukumo, a Umo hunter. When the party asks her what her purpose was, she explains that it was simply to obtain the bounty on the Tsuchinoko, so she could have enough cash to buy expensive things. Kotarou is simply let go by her team and resumes their regular schedule. Once more, Kotarou and Shizuru eat lunch beneath the massive tree in their schoolyard. Shizuru refuses to give Kotarou any of the broiled sori, while she gobbles it up. Kotarou acknowledges her feelings and inquires about Shizuru's eye patch, assuming it was used to mask an injured eye. After taking it off, Shizuru displays her stunning right eye to Kotarou. Kotarou gives Shizuru a compliment on her eye and makes her blush. Kotarou finishes the last of his Coke can after lunch. Suddenly, Lucia lunges at him, making him smash all the drink cans in the school trash can and replace them. When he finishes it, she lectures him about rising ocean levels and global warming. In summary, in the end, Kotarou irritates her and is beaten once more. Kotarou spots the small woman on the roof of a residential building that evening as he makes his way home and decides to pursue her. In the process, he rewrites his body to become extremely strong and makes use of his secret ability for the first time since the beginning of the show. He leaps onto the buildings and pursues the girl, but he eventually loses her. As Kotarou watches from the top of a building, a hunter and his hound dog appear on the same roof. The hound chases after Kotarou as he flees for his life. He makes it to the subway somehow, and the hound is still chasing him. The hound eventually follows him into the water. An unidentified figure emerges from behind Kotarou's drowning and murders the hound. When Kotarou opens his eyes again, he is with two men at a late-night food stall. The men inform him they saved him from being eaten by their game after he asked all the pertinent questions. Ternetti and Asaka are the names of two of the people that identify themselves. Unexpectedly, Shizuru shows up to the ramen stall and places her own order. Other patrons soon show in and start gorging on the mouth-watering ramen. When Kotarou gets home extremely late at night, Sakuya is there. Sakuya had apparently gone out to get Chihaya some ice cream. This time, Kotarou tries to make fun of him, but she notices something strange about Chihaya's butler. One afternoon, over lunch, Shizuru remembers her happy childhood memories with her parents and longs for their presence. She sees Kotarou when she opens her eyes, and he invites her to eat. Together, the two eat a very filling lunch till the bell terminates their break. Kotarou returns to his investigative group after one of their classes to inform them about the ramen shop he woke up in that night. Reluctantly consenting to accompany him, Kotarou leads his people to that precise location so they can investigate. Sadly for him, there was nobody in the room. They all depart from Kotarou despite his attempts to hold them up, so they can wait a little while longer. Kotarou strolls back to his residence through the streets after school. He meets a redhead who seemed to recognize him. The guy greets Kotarou, introduces himself, and warns her about the brats that are loose in the alleyways, always waiting to jump on and harass any poor, unfortunate person. Kotarou disregards his advice and enters the restricted passageway without stopping. Some of the brats the red-haired guy warned him about are waiting for him there. The brats are about to beat the hell out of each other when they discover that Kotarou is connected in some way to Yoshino, the ruler of the streets. It comes out that Yoshino was a threat to those streets, and that he was the one who made them into the heroes. When they ask what Kotarou wants, he tells them the store he's looking for, and they assist him. Kotarou sees Shizuru and her together when she soon comes at the shop. The butler is introduced to by Kotarou, who informs him that he is there in quest of wild, unnamed animals. To continue their dinner, the butler shows him a number of photos of leaves and wild creatures. After eating, Kotarou and Shizuru return to school. Senri is shown Kotarou's pictures of the wild animals there, but she chooses to ignore them, and instead engages in her video games. Kotarou gives Shizuru a player, so she can listen to the CD he got her the day before. Kotarou brings Shizuru back to his place, so she can listen to the CD on his record player. After returning to school for a short while, Kotarou is seen daydreaming about a ghost girl who comes to see him at night. The ghost girl shows up to Kotarou's class while he is trying to figure out how to look after her. Everyone was perplexed as to why the doors suddenly flew open, given that it was a ghost that only Kotarou could see. After giving Kotarou another wrist suck, the ghost leaves the classroom. Kotarou immediately goes to Senri after class to show her the wound. But Shizuru invites him to follow her home when she stops him along the way. After agreeing to this, Kotarou quickly gets into a car with Shizuru and her driver to go to Shizuru's actual residence. The driver lets Shizuru and Kotarou have some alone time when they arrive. When Kotarou discovers that none of her parents are home, they all wait for at least one of them to return. When night falls, a woman who appears to be Shizuru's mother passes by and finds herself unable to recall her own daughter. What took place? As Shizuru's father comes back, Kotarou tries to reason with her parents. However, Shizuru simply drags him along with her and leaves. She responds that she can make others forget about her when Kotarou wonders why her parents don't remember her. It turns out that's the only reason her right eye is multicolored. Next, Shizuru shares with Kotarou her early years. She shares with him the story of when her parents moved into a new home. Up until the unthinkable occurred and the house burned down, they were all content. Shizuru comes over to her parents, who are asleep, wishing that the agony in their bodies would stop. Her right eye has already been damaged, but the right had already changed into her multicolored eye by the time she arrived at the hospital. Shizuru's mother grew increasingly estranged from their daughter months after the incident. She eventually consented to be admitted into a mental health hospital. When Shizuru returns home during the break a few months later, she discovers her parents bickering once more. She therefore succeeded in forcing her parents to lose their memory in some way. Kotarou and Shizuru return to the car and make their way home after Shizuru finishes delivering her story. The driver tells her everything about Shizuru and mentions how wealthy she was while Shizuru is sleeping. When Kotarou comes to Shizuru's house, he wakes him up after hearing everything there is to hear. He walks back to the house after saying farewell to her. Lucia freaked out and moves out of her path when she touches some flowers at school the following day. When Kotarou finally gets to speak with her, she reveals to him that she too has secrets she couldn't bear to share. When the girls next get together at school, Kotarou tells them about Asahihaka, a cursed woman. She seemed to be able to use poison to end the life of any living thing. Just by putting her hands together, she was laced. Kotarou forbids himself from pursuing the young girl and makes sure to inform the girls about the note he found in the mailbox. If not, Asahi's curse would fall on him and his whole crew. Kotarou delivers the letter to Senri, the head of the occult group, and informs her of its contents. But she doesn't want to be involved and would rather carry on with her video gaming habit. After reading the entire letter, Kotarou discovers that Lucia wasn't there. He wonders what could be wrong with Lucia as he spends his afternoon break with Shizuru. That afternoon, Shizuru makes the decision to reveal to him Lucia's true story. When night falls, Kotarou gives Yoshino a call to get some information about the primary school. It turns out that Yoshino cannot assist Kotarou. Rather, he cautions Kotarou to keep his distance if things get out of hand, and to be aware of glass shattering behind him. With a thank you, Kotarou ends the call. When dusk falls, Kotarou approaches Lucia to use the photocopier without getting her permission. When he's finished, he purposefully leaves a copy in the copier. In the corridor, Lucia locates the copy and gives it back to him. The glass breakage occurs close to them as he is going to retrieve it. Lucia makes an effort to ascertain whether Kotarou actually thought the curse was true. Kotarou, on the other hand, says everything is well and continues on his journey. Lucia leaves for home a few minutes later as well. She encounters a ghost pleading with her not to interrupt her sleep on the way there. She would have to do things better kept unsaid if not. Lucia lets out a loud cry and simply lies down on the road. Afterwards, she stands up again and heads to her room. She is comforted by the ghost, who accompanies her. Kotarou meets Anu that evening at his occult group, and she gives him a column that a journalist wrote about the cursed girl, Asahi, back in the day. Kotarou takes a stroll home. Since it was raining, he was unable to see the class representative next to him, and was instead peering into his soul as he considered the words in the column. Koru is cautioned to cease researching by Lucia, who was truly possessed, to avoid being cursed after she departs. Koru returns with Lucia. A few hours into the night, Lucia finally realizes what has transpired. She chooses to reveal her abilities to Kotarou. She stands up, takes a flower in her hands, and keeps it there. Kotarou is surprised as the blossom withers away. It was then that he recalled what Shizuru had said to him that day at lunch. Despite Lucia's self-loathing and resentment, Kotarou approaches her and touches her. With her bare hands, Lucia pulls him away and loses her mood. She had no idea that she had already touched Kotarou, who was already contaminated. Next, Kotarou makes the decision to visit the orphanage that reared Asahi. When he arrives at the deserted orphanage, he discovers that Lucia was waiting for him. When Lucia asks how he found her, Kotarou explains his entire strategy to her. Then Lucia reveals her abilities to them once more, and never stops telling him to avoid her. Kotarou passes out from the effects of the poison as she is speaking. It's too late when Lucia tries to bring him to a hospital. Lucia becomes extremely guilty and sobs aloud, believing that her poison will kill him. She is shocked to learn that Kotarou utilizes his own rewriting power to change his body so that it can withstand the poison. Kotarou returned to normalcy in a brief period of time. As he holds Lucia, he reassures her that he is always there for her and that she shouldn't feel alone. Lucia breaks down in tears and becomes quite emotional. Fortunately, the pair returns to a local hospital. As it happens, Kotarou is okay. Kotarou receives an invitation from Nishikaju, a member of the Covert Guardian organization, to become a part of her elite superhuman team that guards Earth against threats. She also informs him about a key that certain crooks are pursuing. A key that, if it could be used, could end the world. After giving it some thought, Kotarou agrees to join them if Lucia makes him lunch. They had no idea that poor Shizuru had been listening in on their talk and could hear the two of them laughing. Lucia kidnaps Kotarou after putting on her maid costume and making him lunch, and shows him her raised uniform by bringing him to a lesson. When she's safe, she takes off the blindfolds and shows him her outfit. When Kotarou makes a crude comment about the way she's dressed, Lucia becomes so agitated that she punches him through the roof. Following all the commotion, Kotarou gets up and starts eating his meal. It tastes pretty decent for someone whose hands are full with poison. Lucia's meal is. They talk about Shizuru and Lucia's relationship while he eats his lunch. If poisoned, Shizuru could apparently make medication to heal her own body. Lucia had been her lone friend and felt completely at ease around her. Koru gives her some encouraging words before exposing her once more. After lunch, Lucia returns to the team and apologizes to Tori for acting strangely toward her the previous day. Tori accepts her apology and queries her about the reason for her excessive clinging to cover her root. Lucia explains to her that this is because she and Kotarou have been friends for a very long time. Shizuru joins her as she gives Kotarou a hug. The occult investigation group then follows up on their next tip to locate otherworldly beings. They reach an antique shop after arriving at a confectionery store. In the store, they discover Yoshino boasting about a famous sword, which they unintentionally destroy. After that, they investigate and resolve a couple other incidents in the area. Once their village is saved in a single day, Kotarou and his gang return to their camp to assess their alternatives. Kotarou presents the group with their next lead, which he discovered on an internet hidden blog. Their next lead entails visiting a forest to investigate some strange occurrences. Everyone initially declines to accompany him. On Saturday, though, Kotarou decides to take everyone to the forest. When Saturday arrives, Kotarou takes Kotori's dog with him and employs her as his bodyguard. The group enters the woodland once everyone is present. They are preparing to drink from a charming tiny trickle of water they come upon while traveling. Lucia, however, forbids them from proceeding because the water cannot be purified. The group keeps going farther into the forest until something starts to shift. In the heart of the forest, Shizuru discovers a strange creature and follows it until they reach a rainbow river. The pond's water has turned a different color due to the stench of wastewater pollutants. Even the surrounding living species have all perished. After giving them a brief analysis, the team returns to the school. While returning, Kotarou experiences vertigo and abruptly recalls a specific location. It's as though he has visited there before. The ghost girl then materializes behind him and guides him to the tree he was at a few nights prior in his dream. Kotarou faints a little and is helped up by his teammates as he recalls the dream. Fortunately, he escapes with no injuries and returns to school without incident. That evening, Kotarou teams up with their bodyguard to collaborate on their school blog post regarding climate change and related topics. Kotarou and the bodyguard have an insightful discussion during which she proposes that the planet should be purged of people in order to preserve it. Without giving it any thought, Kotarou returns home and takes a nap to relieve his tension. Kotarou gets a call from Inu the following day regarding a juicy intelligence lead she found while conducting study. Kotarou gets up and gets ready for school after the call. Kotarou learns at school that Inu hasn't been home for the last 3 days. He wonders where she could be and becomes extremely astonished. A few days after Inu vanishes, the school puts a halt to the Occult Club's operations. When Kotarou learns this, he becomes enraged and demands to know why the authorities took that action. Senri informs him that Inu's fixation on tracking out leads for the Occult Club appears to be well known. Thus, the authorities connected the club to her disappearance. The suspension could be interpreted as retribution for forcing Inu to go missing. In an attempt to rally the team to defend their standing in the school, Kotarou loses his cool. But no one says anything, so he gets to vent instead. The women tell him they all feel the same way after he's finished. It is not right to penalize them for someone else's carelessness. Kotarou proposes that they look for Inu in the woods. Senri informs him that it will be difficult because the search for her has been cancelled. Still, the members of the occult suit up and congregate outside the school grounds in an attempt to find Inu. A few hours later, they give up having found nothing. By dusk, on his way back to his residence, Kotarou runs across Sakuya. Sakuya warns him that if he wants to lead a normal life, he must be extremely cautious in his pursuit. After returning home, Kotarou mulls over his remarks, and the next day, he and the team resume the hunt. They discover some strange tracks on the woodland floor on the second day of their hunt. For a time, they follow the trails, but eventually Kotarou finds himself alone in the forest, as the ladies all stop for a restroom break. The females are still not back from their bathroom break after 30 minutes have passed. As Kotarou stands up to extend his legs, he notices a strange man wearing a cloak leaving. 3 hound dogs ambush Kotarou as she chases them. The dogs go after him non-stop until they corner him. Kotarou attempts to modify his body in order to make it more powerful than the dogs. This didn't work though, because his body didn't adjust to the previous rewrite. When one of the dogs bites into his arm, an odd thing occurs. After creating Wolverine blades, Kotarou uses them to slay one of them. The others flee, realizing that their leader has died. At that moment, Kotarou discovers the other girls in the forest fighting against some other fabled creatures known as demons. After joining them, Kotarou assists in dispatching the creatures. Following the battle, Kotarou passes out from a hand wound. Shizuru dashes to Kotarou's aid, hurrying to assist him. She fully heals him with her magical abilities so that he can resume fighting the creatures. Kotarou makes the decision to venture into the jungle to find the other girls. By dusk, he locates the 3 surviving females in the midst of the forest and exhorts them to return to the others. Just as they are about to go, Kotori is attacked by a tongue-wielding mythological creature that emerges on top of them. Fortunately for her, Kotarou blocks the path and manages to get the tongue of the monster stuck in his fingers. He is drawn in its direction so that it can consume him. But Kotarou pulls out his Wolverine claws and fights the dragon thing with them. He battles the creature for a short while until the ghost girl intervenes to keep him from dying. The ghost girl turns to face Kotarou after slaying the dragon, positioning her pink ribbons so that they sever his cheek. Fortunately, Kotori intervenes to save Kotarou. Later, the ghost girl departs from Kotarou and returns to the forest. Kotori assists Kotarou in reaching the others ahead of him. After arriving, when Kotarou discovers that every demon has been slain by the females. But as the girls' mutual trust grew, the situation appeared a touch uncomfortable. It appears that Senri and Otori were somewhat shielded by the demons. It turned out that they were Shizuru's and Lucia's adversaries. They were employed by the malevolent company Gaia. Senri, the Occult Club president, challenges Lucia to assault her and acknowledges that she summoned the demons for an attack. When Lucia becomes irritated, she charges at her. But Sakuya reappears from the shadow of the forest, and he returns the two girls to the city. When Kotarou tries to follow them, his body fails him, and he collapses. A few days later, with Otori, Senri, and the other Occult Club members absent, school resumes as usual. When Yoshino senses something strange about Kotarou, he asks him what's wrong. Though Kotarou constantly wondering what would happen to his new friends and the Occult Club in the near future, he swallows it and promises him everything will be all right. Space Rock is traveling from far-off galaxies towards Earth. On a sunny afternoon, Ghost Girl stands up in Kotarou's house, seemingly anticipating something strange to happen. She is knocked unconscious in a matter of seconds after the tiny space pebble falls on her head. Kotarou's life returns to its previous monotonous state 3 days following the event with the girls. He now goes to school like any other child, and is always hoping to hear from one or more of his old pals. After class one day, Yoshino asks Kotarou where the girls are. Kotarou pretends everything is okay and tells him so. With a sigh, Yoshino leaves him on his own. Kotarou eventually gains control over his wolverine claws that evening. He pulls them out and makes an attempt to cut his shoes. The claws pierce the shoes with an unexpected level of sharpness. Kotarou makes an effort to fall asleep. But just as he shuts the door to his balcony, Ghost Girl appears to him for the first time and begs for assistance. Kotarou's homeroom teacher tells the class the following day at school that Inu has been located and taken to a hospital in a nearby town. Kotarou is relieved because he thought Inu had passed away. Kotarou heads to the school building's balcony to unwind after class. Shizuru pays him a visit before leaving suddenly to say bye. When Kotarou returns home that evening, everything in his house is upside down. His thoughts are piqued when he notices Ghost Girl's well-known pink ribbons. When he arrives in his room, Ghost Girl is there. Ghost Girl assures Kotarou she's not a ghost, introducing herself as Kajiri-chan. She informs Kotarou that she's on a quest to discover who she is so she may be entire again, whatever that means, despite the fact that her memory is somewhat hazy. She accepts Kotarou's invitation to spend the night with him. The following day, while he is in school, Kotarou provides Kajiri access to the internet and some time to play online. Kotarou arrives at school worn out, but full of hope for the day. Sadly for him, Kajiri had already enrolled in Kotarou's school, thus that was not the case. Yoshino makes an attempt to keep her from going to class, but she gives him a really hard slap. Kotarou ushers her out of the classroom and into a quieter area without delay. There, Kajiri assures him that she will be all right because she had studied everything she could about people and education online. She never stops bragging to Kotarou about how much she knows about people and their relationships, proving beyond a doubt that she is not a human. Still, he chooses to take her on a tour of the school. The cafe and Kajiri are their first stops, embarrassing herself and Kotarou following a fekaf drink. Kotarou brings Kajiri to the school's park next, and finds that he kind of likes it. He discovers Inu there and dashes over to say hello. Looking perplexed, Inu admits to Kotarou that she can't recall her background. Her memories appeared to have been erased by whatever had happened to her. After seating her, Kotarou strikes up a brief conversation with her. After a small chuckle, Anu hands him a memory card and lets her go. After a few hours, Kajiri and Kotarou arrive home and explore the area. When she inquires about his parents, he describes their hectic life as researchers. It seemed that they were too busy to take care of him and had no time for him. Senri pulls an elderly woman in a wheelchair to a boardroom at that precise moment, so she can attend a meeting regarding the key. As the meeting progresses, she meets Otori, Chihaya, and Sakuya and sees herself out. The three of them unwind and talk about their experiences at the Occult Club. Chihaya inquires about the others and Kotarou. Senri informs her, though, that she doesn't know anything about them. In another scene, Shizuru and Lucia find and kill the monster that destroyed her parents' home in order to get even. Then, instead of the Otoris and the others, they both go to talk about their aspirations with Shizuru's grandfather and Nishikuju. Kotarou continues to look into the cause of Inu's memory loss. Kotarou is shown a text from Kotori by Kajiri. After Kotarou responds to her text, they enjoy a pleasant conversation together. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Until next time.